Welcome to another edition of the Bleed Los Podcast. This week's podcast is presented by our partners at BetOnline. They continue to be the number one source for all of your betting needs and sports information. Find all of the latest odds, news, sports developments, including this year's Wimbledon finals, Major League Baseball, the latest fighting news, and even next season's early NFL features. So head on over to their website today, which is betonline.ag, and use your mobile device, whatever device you have, to sign up, and you will receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code, which is BLEAV, B-L-E-A-V, to get that bonus and get into the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Huge thanks to them for presenting this week's episode of the podcast. And stopping by the carne asada this week is a former Los Angeles Dodger, current Sportsnet LA analyst, Eric Karros. Eric, how you doing, man?
What's happening? Glad to be here.
Thanks for joining us for a little bit here. I've always been intrigued with how open you've been about stuff ever since your playing days, and so I wanted to ask you one of those things. You openly talked about the minors and kind of the grind, if you will. You know, kind of earning your stripes and paying your dues. The whole, you know, we're gonna all chip in our meal money and get a loaf of bread and some peanut butter and share PB&J sandwiches. But one thing that stood out to me about you were the 1992 Rookie of the Year. You were called up, though, in 1991, and you made your major league debut as a pinch runner. I've always wanted to ask you, how was that for you, as that being your debut?
So it's a pretty good story, right? Just because if you were to say, hey, what was Karros's debut, you know, you would think as a pinch hitter or something along those lines, because obviously my career was more known for hitting than base running, right? But it was as a pinch runner for Mike Sharperson, and so like you might think, damn, that's kind of nuts. But remember, a Hall of Fame manager, Tommy Lasorda, he made that move, right? But that's what it was. It was against the Cubs, and I'd just been called up. There were 5 of us, myself, a guy named Tom Goodwin, John Wetland, a couple other guys. But anyhow, that was Sharpie was on first base, and I think they were just trying to get him out of the game. We were probably way ahead. And Tommy said, hey, Karros, go grab a helmet. You're going to pinch run. I was like, you sure? You know, you sure? And, had me go out there and pinch run. I didn't do anything. I just went out there and stood on the base.
Well, and the reason I bring that up, because you didn't get your first hit for several days after that, and then the season kind of, you know, dwindled down. And from there, the season starts again in 92. Did you know that you were going to make the big league squad the next year?
No. So as you said, I'd been called up 91, played. So then that winter, I went down to Venezuela, Caracas, Venezuela.
Yeah.
That was my second stint. I'd gone the winter before. And I'd done decent. I got sick, came home right before the holidays. But, you know, like, hey, they want me to go back down? Sure, you know, I'll do whatever they ask, because there was a chance I could, you know, fight for the starting first base position. They still had Eddie Murray. Wasn't sure if he was going to re-sign or not. So I went down to Venezuela again. And I had a great time off the field. On the field, I was no bueno, dude. Not good. And they had seen enough, and they sent me home. And so then now it's like the Dodgers are wondering, hey, is this kid ready? They had Eddie Murray had signed with New York. I think they traded for Todd Benzinger. Cal Daniels had a first base glove. Straw had a first base glove. You know, hell, Tommy was taking ground balls with me over at first, you know, just screwing around as a manager. So to say that I thought I was going to make the team, no. I had a great spring. Somebody got hurt. A pitcher got hurt. And they just kind of had to keep me because my spring was so good. But I ended up making the team. And you know, in hindsight, great. But it was frustrating too, though, because I had 3 great years in the minor leagues. It wasn't like, all of a sudden 1 year things clicked. 3 great years, but this Winterball episode for, a month kind of was like, hey, wait, we don't know if the guy can play. So that, whatever. It worked out, but like at the time wasn't too cool.
No, and well, the reason I bring it up is because of how open you were about the grind in the minor leagues back in that day, right? And to go from that grind, if you will, to it worked out, like you said, you were in the 1992 Rookie of the Year, and kind of the rest is history. But what I appreciate that you've pointed out is, I don't remember who told you who it was. It was someone in the big leagues that they told you once you got up to appreciate it because it goes in a blink of an eye.
Brett Butler.
Yeah.
Brett Butler, during the riots, couldn't get back down to where I lived, had to stay north of the 10 freeway, staying with Bugsy. That was his nickname. But he was an older guy, always mentoring me. And one of these nights, he's talking to me, and he's like, look, Eric, you better appreciate every day in the big leagues like it's your last, because it's going to go like boom, snaps his fingers. Again, I'm 23, 24, and I'm just going like, look, dude, I'm going to be around here for a long time, single guy. Like, I don't need this kind of advice. But I'll be darned, he was right. Just boom, career over.
Yeah, because I just turned 36, and I was thinking about this. 1992 wasn't that long ago, but it's like, whoa, that was,
right? Yeah. Right? It was 30 years ago. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I mean, I get it when I go look in the mirror. I'm like, whoa, hey, But, dude, when you say 30 years ago, I'm like, come on, man, that wasn't 30 years ago. 30 years ago.
And with that, I wanted to ask you, the reason I kind of am tying this all in, we talk a lot about, obviously, the Dodgers in this podcast because it's a Dodger-centric podcast. But we've been so spoiled for the better part of a decade with this kind of, this iteration of this team, and people are nitpicking and all this and that. Obviously, you've been lucky enough to watch it from the sideline to a certain degree as well. For those fans that are kind of, the sky is falling on the reg, I wanted you to kind of put that into perspective for those, the fan base.
So again, it's you become used to it, and it's the expectation is, of course, the Dodgers are going to win the division. Of course, they're going to go through the playoffs. And it's all right. Who are the Dodgers going to play for the World Series? And that this group, that's grown up with, these players in the last, I want to say, what's it almost been a 10-year run, an 8-year run, whatever it's been. That's the norm, right? That's the norm. But it hasn't always been like that, and it wasn't always like that. And when it is like that, again, I don't want to say you take it for granted, but it is difficult as heck to win in the big leagues, let alone win a world championship. I mean, you can even look at the Dodgers, right? It's, you're thinking every year going to the World Series, but the reality is there's been one world championship, and that was in the 20 season, right? So it just, you got to be lucky. You got to be good, no doubt, but you got to have a lot of luck on your side. I don't care who you are, what team, whatever. You look back in that run in the postseason, I promise you, you can find a game or two or a play that you just went, whoa, that doesn't happen. These guys don't win. And so, it's understandable now. It's like I don't want to say you want to nitpick, but, even when we're doing games, calling games, it's well, so-and-so's not hitting, or, hey, the offense needs to be a little better, or the pitching's that. Oh, but by the way, the Dodgers have the best record in the National League. Thank you. Right?
Right.
Hey, Eric, I wanted to follow up with you because you mentioned Winterball. We had Max Muncy on the show, and we had Dale Murphy on the show, and they all raved about their Winterball experiences. Being that we are the only Latino podcast that focuses on the Dodgers, what stories can you share about your experience in Winter that are G-rated, that are appropriate, that won't get you in trouble with your family?
So you said Dale Murphy. Okay, yeah. I'll go with Max Muncy. Where did he play Winterball? Like,
in Mexico. He played for the Charros in Guadalajara.
Did he really play in the Mexican Winter League?
Yeah. He raved about it. He loved every aspect. Okay. Murphy, the same way. I was so surprised because here's Dale Murphy, right? And he loved the food. He loved everything. You said you had a better time off the field than on.
No doubt. Like so my experience was down in Caracas, and I can say it now, but it was where we stayed. Across the street was this hotel, and all the tourists would go to this hotel, and whether, a lot of people from Spain, would come, and, male, female, but it was almost like you go to the pool, you hang out at the pool until about 2:00 in the afternoon. You grab some pollo y pan on the way to the field. You eat, in my situation, you go play the game. And then, after the game, you were, you found a place to relax for a few hours, and you go home, you get about 5 hours of sleep, and you repeat, right? And it was a lot of fun. I was younger then, obviously. Meet a lot of interesting people. You start to also, what I didn't understand, and why Winterball was so good in helping me. So a lot of times, like in the minor leagues, you have the guys from whether it was the Dominican or Venezuela or, wherever. They're coming over here playing ball. And at the time when I'm coming, it's like, we're playing like it's, we're trying to get the world championship for the Cal League, right? For Bakersfield or Albuquerque in the Coast League. And these guys, they didn't have the same, they were just trying to survive. Let me just put it that way. They're like, yeah, if we win, great. But like, look, I'm just trying to survive. And so sometimes it would, you get kind of teed off, right? Because it's like, man, come on, we're trying to win the championship here. And that's a big deal for all these small towns or whatever. So then when I go over to play Winterball, so that is now all these guys are home, right? They're playing in front of their family and friends who they interact with all the time. And, I don't know anybody down there, right? I there's 3 other, gringos, American dudes on the team. We're just like trying to survive, right?
Right.
And I understood now because these guys are they're running through walls, and that's all that matters. And I get it, because that's the way that I'm playing when I'm in Bakersfield, right? But then when I'm down there, like, sure, I want to do well, I want to win, but I'm just trying to survive. That's my first thing. So it helped me understand guys when they're coming over here and being, they're in a quote unquote foreign country when they're in the United States, and how difficult it is and what they have to go through. And I think that's probably the thing that Winterball, besides looking at it, I learned a lot of lessons, and it's a whole different world over there. But it helped me understand what these guys were going through, and it helped me, in the my latter years in the minor leagues, and then all through the big leagues.
¿Y tu español? ¿Lo hablas bien?
Más o menos.
There we go.
Cuando necesito.
Hey, there we go. Now you were officially a friend of the carne asada right there, Eric. So you mentioned earlier also to appreciate not only the time in the big leagues, but also that these fans need to appreciate this stretch that the Dodgers are going, this 10-year stretch. That mid-90s Dodgers team, that 94, 95, 96, I feel is kind of like a forgotten period in Dodger baseball. There were a lot of good players on that team. And let's not forget, folks, we are talking to the Los Angeles Dodgers all-time home run leader. How many times do you throw that in Piazza's face when you see him?
It's funny you mentioned those teams. And our best team, no question, was the 97 team that we didn't even get in, right? Yeah. And that we were, I still, to this day, I thought we were the best team in the National League. The Marlins ended up winning. They had come to our place. I think it was late August, 4-game series. We took 3 out of 4. We should have taken 4, and then we ran out of gas the last week. I think we had a 2-game lead with 9 or 11 to go. We lost 2 devastating games in San Francisco. And we ended up not getting, we lost by a game or 2, I think. But I'd say like those teams for me, they were, if you look back at like our payroll for those ball clubs, we would be 15th or 16th in the league. We weren't top of the line payroll team. And we always, during that stage, we missed that. We didn't have that veteran presence. We didn't have, and if you go back to like the 70 Dodgers in the mid 70s, and yes, you have the Garvey, Say, Lopes, Russell. But what put them over the top was Jimmy Wynn coming over in 74, 70, he should have won the MVP that year. Or Reggie Smith a few years later, or Dusty Baker. So you always have like these, it was the youth, no doubt, but they bring in a horse. And I'm not talking about, we're bringing in Chad Curtis, right? Otis Nixon. Like, you probably don't even know those names, right?
No, I remember Otis Nixon from the Braves.
So, and I'll never forget this. We're playing the Braves in '96, and we just been announced. We're on the field, and I'm standing next to Mondesi because we've got they're doing the lineup. So then they announce the Braves reserves, and they're like, Danny Nagel, David Justice, reserves, not in the lineup. And Mondi goes, holy shit, kid, they got 2 effing teams over there. And I'm like, right, dude, like we're going, Piazza, we're doing all youth stuff. And I remember we had some times, there was a chance we were going to get Robin Ventura. We didn't do it. We had Randy Johnson, we had a uniform made for.
Really?
There were some big, but we never, I think what happened, like looking back on it, when we traded Pedro for Delino, after that, bam, didn't trade any young guy. Like every young guy was going to be the next coming of, the greatest player and I don't want to say we got gun shy, but we had Carlos Hernandez, Kareem Garcia, Roger Cedeno, like all these guys we couldn't trade because, we didn't. And at the time we could have got Robin Ventura, could have got, Randy John, could have got, all those guys. So yes, we had good teams, but we played to where we should have been. I mean, it would have been nice to win postseason games to get to a whatever, but we just, we didn't. We aren't getting you, Darvish, Max Scherzer. We're not making those moves, right? We just weren't.
So why is it that it sticks with players like that? When we had Dontrell on the show, and he was telling us how much crap Mark Pryor still gives Dontrell about that Cubs Marlins series. It seems that you guys always run into each other, and you guys remember stuff from years ago, and it's not the highlights of your career; it's the lowlights.
It's not. It's what elicits the most emotional response, right? And usually, and as you guys know, it's like the lows have a much greater impact than the highs, right?
Right.
The highs are like, okay, great, then it's fleeting. But the lows will always stick with you because you always are saying, what if this would have been done, if this would have happened, if we would have just, I don't want to say you try to redo it, but it's like, man, if we would have, blah, blah, blah. So that's why there are, you go back to like, the Dontrell with Pryor. It's like, I was playing first base for that team. And, like really the Marlins, like, does anybody even care that the Marlins won a World Series that year? No, nobody cares. Right. I remember it's like I was on a team in 2004 with the Redmond was on the team, the left-handed pitcher. We were together with the A's, and he's getting his ring, right? And, they got this like huge ring that you would never wear anywhere because it's so ridiculously big, right?
Right.
And it was really the first of its time. But I remember, saying to him, I go, dude, so if we would have won, we are golden in the city of Chicago for life.
Yes.
Life. You are, I don't even know if you're gold in nobody cares. Like, nobody cares. That's just the reality. The only people that care about that championship are the guys on the team. That's it.
So when that play happened, did you realize how big the Bartman thing was going to become at that point?
No, it was frustrating, right? You're just thinking in the way Moises reacted, you're thinking, okay, he could have caught it. But I still thought, like, we're still up. I think it was 3-0 at the time, right? We got Pryor on the hill. We're gonna shut this thing out, right? And then this happens, the ground ball. And even after losing that game, I was like, so what? We got,
right.
We got Kerry Wood, and I believe Redmond started Game 7, if I'm not mistaken, for Florida.
I don't remember.
But anyhow, we hadn't even gotten the dugout yet, and Miguel Cabrera had hit a 3-run home run. We're down 3-0 before we even sit in the dugout. I'm like, oh boy! But still, we were ahead 5-3 after the 5th inning. 5-3, and you want to talk about you remembering stuff. 5-3 in the 5th inning. We're ahead. They have a guy named Brian Barnes or something leads off, and Kerry Wood walks him. And Kerry Wood was dominant that year, right?
Yeah.
Brian Barnes never plays another game after that season because he goes on to be a dentist. Like, how the hell is Brian Barnes walk? Really? So, whatever. But I don't remember any of that, right? That doesn't stick to me or anything.
I love that line. He became a dentist. Go ahead, Alonzo.
Speaking of random things to remember, just because I was young, right? Like I mentioned to you, I just turned 36. But in '95, there was another guy that kind of made a little bit of a splash around here. His name is Hideo Nomo, and I've always, because he was such an enigma. And and the reason I say it that way, when I worked in baseball, a lot of guys would ask for his autograph, and he was kind of, he was very, I don't want to say standoffish, but he was, again, just an enigma. He was super interesting to just kind of see him interact with people. But I've always been curious. You obviously played behind him, being at first.
Right.
What was it like to watch that dude just work?
So what he had to go through and the weight of what he had on his shoulders, I don't know that look at, there's Jackie Robinson, which is way over, it's out of the thing, right? Of what he had to deal with, the responsibilities, all that, like crazy, nothing comparable to that. But I would argue that a distant second would have been Hideo Nomo, because he's coming over. Now, there was a left-handed pitcher, I forget. Left-handed pitcher.
Daisuke Matsuzaka.
Who?
Daisuke Matsuzaka?
No. He pitched for the Giants in the 60s.
Oh.
And he was really the first Japanese ball player to come over. But it wasn't the fanfare. It wasn't anything. But he was a left-handed pitcher, I believe. And he pitched for the Giants in the 60s. So anyhow, he comes over, does his thing. But it didn't open the floodgates. It didn't. So when Nomo comes over, Nomo was an established star in Japan, right? He was, he had won the equivalent of the Cy Young, this and that. He was also kind of a rebel, like he's going to buck the system. He's going to come over to Major League Baseball and try and play and, whatever. So he's got the weight of the country of Japan on his shoulders. And I don't know if everybody's rooting for him or if they're wanting him to fail or what it is, because, again, he's leaving the Japanese major leagues to come, pursue the big leagues. So he's got that pressure of, man, I'm kind of on my own island. I've got to perform. I've got to do well. If I do well, then that opens the door for, Ichiro, Matsui. There were some lesser guys that played. But if he doesn't do well and doesn't have the success, doesn't take the, Major League Baseball in the United States by storm, I don't know that door is open. At least it's not open then. And so he comes to LA. He's the tornado. He's that dude had the biggest set of you-know-what that I think I've ever played with. And I'm not kidding you. That guy would take the ball anytime. His arm could be ready to fall off, and they'd go out to the mound and they'd say, "How you doing, Hideo?" And he'd go, "Hey," like literally, which meant I got to get the F back in the dugout, And so he super guy, team guy. Always made sure he had an interpreter because he understood. Like he understood, but by having the interpreter, he always could create that shield, right? When he needed to. Japanese press 24/7. Dude couldn't go take a piss without the press following him in the bathroom. Like, you think I'm kidding too, and I'm not. Like, that's how extreme it was. And so it's funny because, in this day and age now, yes, you have social media and that's tough and all that. But if you had if guys had to deal with the amount of pressure that he had in the following, he was one of a kind. Really, he really was. And you got all that, and he shoved, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Masanori Morikama, I think is how you say his name.
Yeah, Morikama. Yeah.
And the other thing about Nomo too, the reason I bring him up is obviously there's the Shohei effect, and we were in off air, we were having a conversation about some stuff, and one of the names that came up was Ichiro, right? Yep. But I don't think that Hideo was also kind of given his flowers, if that makes sense, and where I think he should be, I guess, recognized a little bit more because he was the Beatles, like he was the Beatles for baseball before Shohei.
Right. But like Shohei's, that's a unicorn, right?
That's a whole other.
Shohei's like, that's just that. I don't even know what that is, right? That's
Shohei's Led Zeppelin, and then Hideo's the Beatles.
Dude, but Hideo, Hideo was. So remember this too. Hideo had a Hall of Fame career over in Japan before he came here. So. And again, as much as those guys worked and as much as they throw, who knows how many pitches that guy had thrown before he got here, right? Shohei, I don't know, how old was he when he came over here? Was he 21, 20?
I think he was 21, 20, something like that.
Right. So he had no mileage over in Japan, right? He had no, and again, it's much different. People. Now, the expectations because of the buildup, like this guy's the next Babe Ruth. I heard that from so many scouts and people that had seen him, and you're just going, okay, like, really? The guy can't be that good. The way that he was built up. I think if anything, what he's had to deal with that has been what's so impressive, the expectation was through the roof, and he's been everything and more. Like Hideo, you didn't know, right? You had no. It's like, this dude's coming over here. Yeah, good luck. Right?
well, and with Ohtani, because obviously there's a lot of he's taken the world kind of by storm, right? That he's everywhere. GQ, all that stuff. Is it really fair to call him a unicorn? Because obviously now he's there's Trout.
He's a unicorn because there's nobody else like him.
Yeah.
So you tell me, like, there's not another guy that pitches and hits at that level. Not even – and so this was interesting because I was talking to some front office guys, and, we were talking about how, well, maybe now this is going to open the door and there's going to be more people doing this. Nobody's going to – it's not going to – so the only reason it happened is because it happened somewhere else, and then he came here. But there's nobody that, with the way the game is, that's going to spend 3 years in the minor leagues working, the big league club's going to develop him as a hitter and a pitcher. Like it's you go do that on your own time, which basically is what Shohei did, in Japan. And then when you're polished and ready, come on over here. Nobody's doing that, with some kid, that's out of University of Texas that pitches and hits, and then that's not happening. Just not.
Okay, no, and I 100% agree with you because the likelihood that, like you said, that they're gonna let him go through the minor leagues, do the two-way thing? No chance. There's no chance.
No way.
Juan, go ahead.
Eric, the transition into broadcasting for me seems to have been flawless. Of course, we don't see all the hard work that you put in behind the scenes, but what was your feeling going into broadcasting? Did you really have a desire for it?
So when I was playing, fortunately being here in LA, I had a lot of opportunities to do things. Stu Nahan, who was
Yeah.
prominent way back when. Then I was doing some stuff at Fox. I was on the desk for the World Series at the '01 Worlds, '01 or '02. The Yankees Diamondbacks with Chris Myers. I'll never forget that. We have our post game already, and that's the Yankees are going to win. Rivera's in, and then boom, Luis Gonzales, the Diamondback, hits that jam shot single. Diamondbacks win. That's my first foray into. Okay, we've got the whole show prepared this way, and throw all that stuff in the garbage because now we're going this way, right? And so it was interesting. The way I got my first, I want to say, I guess, break would have been, it was in 2004. I was home. I had been released by the A's that year, and Ed Gorin of Fox calls me up, and it's in September, and says, "Hey, would you like to call the Dodgers-Giants game?" This is the last weekend of the season on Fox. Steve Lyons was he had been suspended for a weekend. He was the analyst for Fox at the time. So I'm like, sure, yeah, I'll do it. This is a national game. It's my first game. I've never broadcast a game in my life. I've done desk work in the newsrooms and everything. But yeah, of course I'll do this, right? I may never get another shot. So ironically, I do that game. It's on a Saturday. That's the one where Steve Finley hits the grand slam. Like, that's a crazy thing. Like, that's my first game. It's a Dodger Giant game, and it's a walk-off. They win the division. And so after that, I did the game, and I'm thinking, oh man, hey, all right, I'm going to be working for Fox now. And so I remember Ed talking to me, and he says, all right, well, that's great. I'm waiting for that contract to be handed to me right there. And he says, so you go get some reps and then check with us in a few years. I was like, what reps, So anyhow, I was fortunate. ESPN, I worked at ESPN for 2 years, did Monday Night Baseball, Wednesday Night Baseball, did 2 years of College World Series, did Little League World Series. So that's where I got all my reps. And that's where, I learned, good, bad, whatever, and kind of, I think then it's like I realized, I would like to do this. It's not as time consuming as if you're playing or if you're coaching. It's a little more, I don't want to say stressful, because you say something, especially nowadays, you say something politically incorrect.
Yeah.
You're done, and you have to prep. Like, you have to prep like no other, because if you think you're just going to walk in there and well, back when I played, blah, 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 or rely on that, you're going to get exposed real quick. And, for as much as you prep, you probably use about 10% of that prep for that particular game or event. And so I've learned, I think my style has changed. It's definitely different doing national stuff versus working for the Dodgers. There's a different feel. You're broadcasting to a different audience. So I'm still getting my feet wet there.
So one of the things that I find interesting, I mean, you're the color guy, you're a former player, you know the game better than we do as we're watching it at home.
Sometimes.
How hard was it to be critical of players in the beginning?
So I don't know that I'm ever critical of players as much as I'm critical of the situation. And here's the thing. It's if I didn't expect it from myself, or like, I'm not going to get on somebody for booting a ball, right? Am I going to, and I'm not going to really get on anybody. It's more or less, I'm going to explain maybe why that happened, right? So why did somebody forget how many outs there were? It's right up on the scoreboard. You should know how. Well, because you're playing 162 games, and sometimes you're standing out there, and you know what? You had a fight with your wife that morning, and you're thinking about, like, holy shit, like I really messed myself up there. And oh, there's 2 outs, right? Like you're a human being first, and that's the thing that, I think sometimes, excuse me, I think that's sometimes frustrating if I am giving that side of the story, because people may want to just hear, oh, no, that guy should have made that play. He's a dog. He's getting paid X amount of dollars. You should have made that play. That has nothing to do with anything, right? What he's getting paid or what he's doing. Like, there's nobody out there that wants to get that hit more or make that play or have success more than, that player out on the field. And so, sometimes I try to relay to the fans, what may be going on. Sometimes it's received. Sometimes, it's, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Whatever.
So how aware are you of those social media, obviously, especially in the national level, whenever there's a national guy and he's being critical of the Dodgers, you hear it all the time. Oh, this guy, of course, the perfect example is Joe Buck. Joe Buck hates the Dodgers. John Smoltz hates the Dodgers. Have you fallen victim to that on the social media?
So I'll be honest, I don't do social media. I'm not on, what is it? Facebook. I've never Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, whatever it is. So, and the reason it's not so, and here's the reason why. It's not, oh, I'm not going to go on that, I'll show you.
Right.
It's, believe it or not, I had a stalker in 2002, and it got pretty hairy. And so from a privacy standpoint, I never entered into that foray, never. And that story is, great story.
And then, can you share it with us?
No, it's not. But let's just say that there was security out inside of my house for a good 3 months. That a guy just sat in the parking in my driveway, just sat 24/7.
How common was that? Like, I get that you need to be friendly with the fans come to support you, but examples like you just said right now, sometimes you don't know who you're dealing with, and you're really.
So for the most part, like, it's great, right? The interaction with fans, it's outstanding. But look at, just the law of averages tells you that not, every one of the 55,000 at Dodger Stadium, is locked in, right? There might be somebody that's wired a little differently, right? Yeah. Just, and so, that's, you try to put yourself in a situation where, yes, you want to be interactive, you want to be friendly, the reality is, without the fans, you don't have an opportunity to play in front of 50,000. There is no Dodger. It's just like Tommy, used to say, without the fans, there's nothing, right?
Yeah.
And that is 100% true. But you read about instances in all different sports, right?
Yeah.
In just life in general. And so, you just try to be careful. Like I said, 99% of the time it's all good. But sometimes it's not.
Go ahead, Alonso.
Wasn't expecting that. That was a curveball that I did not see coming.
I'm going to let you transition from that one. Okay, go ahead.
The pride of Patrick Henry High School in San Diego, Eric Karros here for a few more minutes with us. I wanted to ask you, as we look ahead, with this current iteration of the Dodgers, there's been kind of, this idea thrown out there that maybe Clayton Kershaw should get this start for the All-Star game that's upcoming here at Chavez Ravine. I'm pretty sure if that offer were to be presented to him, I don't think he would say yes. But I also don't know Clayton, kind of at that level. And also, there's the Tony Gonsolin thing. If he should be the starter, he's kind of being, from what a lot of people have been saying on the internet, which obviously you don't partake with. And good for you, by the way. So social media isn't real, so I'm stoked that you don't have to deal with that. But that Tony Gonsolin is kind of not getting the respect that he deserves. After the stellar year that he's had. I'm just kind of curious, with all that stuff kind of going around there with that. And I know a lot of these guys don't really think about that right now because they're thinking about the series that begins with the Cubs. Do you think Clayton Kershaw should start this game, or should it be Tony Gonsolin, or should it be Sandy Alcantara?
So first of all, I got to So when you said, like, without question, like these guys are just thinking about the Cubs series, they're not thinking about the All-Star game, right? So you tell me Gonsolin's not thinking in the back of his head, like, hey, man, if I have another good start, like, there's no way they can't, right? So it's like so all of those guys have great reason or great arguments to start, right? But what is the game, right? So back in the 70s, it was, Pete Rose going to run over Ray Fosse, and that thing is just like, we're winning at all costs, and it's more of a celebration, a production. If you ask 99% of the fans in Major League Baseball, they would probably say, I want to see, Clayton Kershaw start that game, right? Because it's one of the greatest pitchers to ever pitch. It's at Dodger Stadium. Now, who's more deserving of it this year, the first, 3 months of the season? Well, Kersh or Gonsolin? Well, I mean, that's not even a question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's Tony, right? I mean, but what is your depth? I'm not asking you, but it's like in general, what's the definition of the game? What is the purpose? So if the purpose is it's a show and it's great and it's, like, okay, I want to see this production. I want to see this wow factor. I want to see this. So then that shifts me. I want to see, I don't know. Do I want to see Ohtani pitching? Probably. Right? Who else? Who's in the American League? Right? Like So do I want to see Ohtani? And Kersh makes all the sense in the world if he throws. I like the kid from Florida. That guy's just filthy. Do I want to see him facing, Trout, Ohtani, and Aaron Judge, the first three hitters? Like, yeah, dude, I want to see that. Like, that's production value, right?
Yeah.
But there are guys that have earned it, like Tony Gonsolin, and that would mean the world for him to be out on that mound starting. Like it did. How about, Urias, right? He like, dude, take away the win light. He should. So there's so many different angles you can go, and look, like I guess I would say if it was a personal like a personal experience, I never played in an all-star game, and there were years that I felt like I should have and that I had the number. So I would be along the line of the Gonsolin thing, right? Like, dude earned it. I don't give a, So, but I get the Kersh thing. I get Tony. Put it this way: I'd like to see a Dodger start. How's that?
That's a good. And the reason I didn't want to bring up your past all-star thing, that's low-hanging fruit. I feel like that wasn't fair, but I know you guys all you think about it because at the time, the game meant something different, right? And now I feel like it doesn't mean what it used to mean back in the day, because let's call a spade, right? You were just mentioning American League pitchers. I mean, Justin Verlander and Shane McClanahan, I think is how you say his name. They're quietly having great years, but you don't really hear them getting the same kind of noise that Tony Gonsolin and Kershaw are getting, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Right. And so I like, look at, no matter what it represents now, whether it's a show or a game or whatever, as a player, sure, you'd like to have, look at, you play in that all-star game, you're an all-star. Like you can say that for the rest of your life, right? You can say, yeah, I was an all-star. Doesn't matter if you were good, bad, or whatever you play. Yeah, there's a lot of guys that have been all-stars that, would I trade careers with them? No chance in holy you-know-what, dude. Have that career. But there's been, whether it was Tim Salmon or Kirk Gibson or whatever, I mean, there have been some decent guys that didn't play in all-star games.
No, fair. Wanted to ask you. Actually, go ahead, Juan.
Well, go ahead. This is what I wanted to ask real quick. Looking at the Dodgers right now, I know there was that period where it seemed like everyone was getting hurt. If anything, I think what you could say about the Dodgers was maybe they were underwhelming. If you could say that about a first place team, only because the expectations of this team are ridiculous. Right. But they're in first place. They're 6 games out now. And now it looks Like they're going to start to get healthy. They're going to start getting some guys back. They may not need to make a trade. Do you still think they need to make a trade? And what trades do you expect to see?
So I don't know about trades, but I think so. So look, at the end of the day, the goal is to win the World Series, right? We all know that. That's master of the obvious. So is this a team that can, walk through a short series and dominate? So where are the Dodgers vulnerable? So right now, like I'd have to say, I'd say starting pitching.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think any team would love to improve their starting pitching, and you're always one pitch away from somebody going down.
Right.
So I'm gathering as much starting pitching as I can, and yes, I can sit and say, Dustin May's going to be coming back, and hopefully he's great, and let's keep our fingers crossed that Walker Buehler throws again, and let's hope that Tony Gonzalez stays healthy. And Urias is great. Like all these things, right? But so you're starting a series right now against the Braves or the Mets, or in a week you're starting and DeGrom's back, right? So you're going to say, hey, look, at Dodgers are the best team, blah blah blah. I'll take them against anybody. But here are my first three for the Dodgers, and here are my first three for the Mets. And look, on paper, when I'm going, Scherzer and DeGrom, and whether it's Bassett or Carrasco when he's out, like that's going to be a problem, right?
Yeah.
And then the Dodgers, are you going to run out? Right now, like if you take the staff now, who is it Urias one or is Gonzalez one? Is Anderson in the mix? Is Kershaw healthy? Like you have. You go, okay. So I would say this. The Dodgers right now are built better than any team, are in a better position than any other team to get to the postseason. Right? Like they're getting to the post. Like you can book that stuff. Like that's done. We know that. I don't know that I can't say that about the Padres or Giants. Like I could make a case that both of those teams aren't in, right?
Yeah.
I could, I think two teams from the Central probably get in, just because that division is so bad, they're going to get wins. You could have two, maybe three teams from the East. Like my point is, Dodgers are getting in for sure, but in a short series, like that's just a roll of the dice. And I don't care what team I am, even if I'm the Mets right now I'm getting as much starting pitching as I can. I'm getting it all.
Alonso, do you have anything before we wrap up?
I did want to ask you. Sorry, my phone was ringing a second ago, so that's why that was a little weird. So apologies. It wasn't muted. Wanted to ask you, as far as for you, all-time favorite teammate, who is that? Because you've played with some guys.
So I think that probably it changes as I don't want to say as I matured, but as I got older, and because what was important to me in 1995 was not the same as 2000 or 2003 or 4, right? Like we're all different. At 23 and 24, the only thing that mattered was playing games and then where I was going afterwards, right? Later on when I have a family, that's all kids that all that matters. So I would say early on, obviously, Mike and I were really close. I was close with Grzelcyk when he came over. Then we both go to the Cubs. Sean Green was a favorite teammate. Moises Alou in Chicago, off the charts. In Oakland, the pitcher, Kotze was real good. I liked Tim Hudson. Trying to think who else. I mean, and there were guys that mentored me that were older. Tim Wallach, Brett Butler, Roger McDowell. man, Kevin Gross. There were a lot of guys. It varied. But like I said, I used to run around a lot with Mike Piazza, Billy Ashley when he was with us. When I was in Chicago, it was Grud. Oakland was, some of the pitchers. But it just it just varies, year to year, and as my life kind of evolved.
No, and I'm glad you prefaced it with that, because one thing that we obviously try to do is a lot of our listeners just see guys as baseball players, like you were talking about, right? Oh, well, this guy should be doing this because he's making whatever amount of money. When in reality, these are still dudes. They're still just trying to get through this thing called life. And baseball obviously is a grind, but everyone's kind of got their priorities in a different wrap, right?
Well, I don't know. Like I'd say, yeah. I mean, it's right. It's. I don't know that I'd say priorities, but it's like we're not immune to. Like, look. I mean, I don't want to say it, but it's like, okay. So I brought up the stalker thing. We were 8 months pregnant and it didn't work out, right? Like, you have people, like you have things that are everyday issues. Now, granted, for the most part, you're not going to have the economic issues, and that doesn't solve problems, but it makes them lesser of a problem, right? And what I would hope is that like fans understand. Look at when you go to a game, you're there to get rid of all your issues. So you know what? Quite frankly, I don't care that Karros is having a bad day at home or something happened or what. Like, screw that. Dude better get a hit and better field the ground ball, right? Like that's so you have to understand that. But the reality is to also understand that like all these guys, they got issues, man. Like they got real life issues too. And then you put that on top of the whole idea of like, do you think it's fun this year for Belly to go to the park every day? You think he's like waking up going like, yeah, sweet, dude, I got a game today. Like, do you think Max Muncy has been like, those are real issues. Those are like, I don't want to say they're paralyzing issues, but like, dude, it's hard enough to play under optimal conditions. But when you're up there going like, oh man, I got to get a hit. Like it is, that's what makes this game difficult. Like I'm totally going off on a soapbox here, but that's what separate. Like this is, yes, it's a little kids game, but at the big league level, it's played by men. And if you can't, this part up here is the big difference maker because it is just a constant kick to the you know what.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, everyone talks about it, right? Hitting a fastball is the hardest thing to do in all of sports. And then when you watch those angles from the catcher's perspective / the batter's perspective, like it's one of those when you see those, I call them the keyboard warriors, like on Twitter when they're talking about like, oh, well, why can't Belly go out and get a hit? Why don't you, my guy? Like, when's the last time you won an MVP?
But think of it like I'm rambling now, but it's like, yes, no doubt the physical part of it would, but think of it this way. So I spend I spend my high school years, my college years, my minor league years. Like the only way you're going to make it is if you're 100% all in, right? Like that's your eat, breathe, sleep, chasing this dream. The chances of getting to the big leagues, let alone staying in the big leagues, let alone making some money to the big leagues, let alone making some like, okay, I'm not going to have to work. Like I got a better chance of going to 7-Eleven and buying lottery tickets, right? Right? So you think you're chasing this thing, and then now like I'm 27 years old, I've been toiling in the minor leagues, I haven't made anything. I just got released. What life skills do I have at 27, 28? I ain't got, you know what my life skills are? I'll meet you over at the local park for an hour and I'll give you hitting lessons to the Little League guy and I'll charge you $80. Like, so that, like you start that stress and you start thinking about all that, like it just, it's interesting. That's what I'd say. It's interesting. I'm not, like I said, and you put this, make sure this part's in the show, I wouldn't trade my situation for anything. I am so lucky that it's luckiest mug around, right?
Right.
And I know that. But it's also, like people, not everybody is as fortunate. There are a lot of guys that got to the big leagues and played big league ball that, like very few does it work out like this.
It's the 1% of the 1%. And that's one.
I'd even argue probably mathematically it's more ridiculous than that, right? Like,
I'm sure.
Dude, it's like I said, I got a better chance of going to 7-Eleven and picking 8 numbers, dude.
Well, last thing before I send it over to Juan to end the show, as we always do. Speaking of a guy that's I think he's going to be okay and probably in the major leagues for a while. Trea Turner has not been extended yet. Do you think he stays, or is this one of those things where it's like, we don't know, and we'll see how it plays out after the season?
Wow. So I think the Dodgers would love to have him, right? And what he means to the organization, what he's done, that goes off the chart. Reality is, if you're Trea though, and you've got this far, you won a batting title last year, you're having a great season right now. Like if I'm getting extended, it's got or getting an extension or signing a deal. It's got to be just like Aaron Judge, right? Like Aaron Judge has got this far. It's like, all right, boys, we're going out to market because we've gone this far. And so it's kind of the same thing, with Trea. I'd be shocked, and the only way that I would think that he would stay at this point right now, like if he signs it, it would have to be something so overwhelming, right? So overwhelming. And, I just don't know. Like, there's nothing to indicate that the Dodgers historically, I don't think they've done an overwhelming deal. Like, somebody might say Mookie Betts got 3. Dude, I would argue that that's probably a good deal for the Dodgers, right? A good deal for the Dodgers. So I'd love to see Trea here, but I think he obviously he's gonna play it out at this stage.
No, I think that's fair to point out because I do agree with you. I do think that the Dodgers underpaid for Mookie, and I know a lot of people think that's crazy, but watch for whatever Juan Soto signs for. I mean, look at what he's also even like turned down, and even Aaron Judge, right? So I mean, the market's there, and someone's going to back up the Brinks truck for them. It's just a matter of what the deal is going to be.
No doubt.
Go ahead, Juan.
All right, we're going to end the show, Eric, with some rapid fire. So first one, has there ever been a time where you pissed off Tommy Lasorda so bad that you feared for your life?
Not that I feared for my life, but I pissed him off many a time.
Can you tell us one of them?
Yeah, like my first year at Philadelphia, I was playing first base, ground ball hit to me with the bases loaded. I overthrew Sosha at home plate for the force out, hit the back screen, all the runners on base scored, and I'm standing out at first base, and I can see Tommy in the dugout, and he's doing, just screaming at the coaches about my terrible play, and I'm just thinking, oh man, I don't know. Like I'm trying to think of excuses to have when and so it's funny. After that inning, I run in there. Tommy meets me, and he's like, "What the F is going on out there, Chief? Blah blah blah." And I'm Tommy. I was trying, and I get the word "trying" out, and he's like, "Try. I can get any one of these blankety blanks in the stands to try. I don't want triers. I want doers." And then he walked away. I'm going, "Oh, dude, this is in '92. I'm trying to belong." So how's that for rapid fire answer? That just killed the whole segment.
That's all right. Was Ramon Martinez underappreciated?
Yes.
Okay. Last one. Big mistake for UCLA to go to the Big Ten.
No, you have to survive athletically. Economics, my man.
So now we're going to end the show the way we always end the show. We are about the Dodgers. We're about LA here on the Bleed Los podcast, but we're also about tacos. So being that you are you grew up
Tito's,
in San...
I've been to Tito's Tacos. That's where I'm going to say, I can't say that.
Why is it with you guys? You guys with Tito's. We have Dale Murphy picked Tito's. Steve Mason picked Tito's. Is it just the crunchiness? Is that what you like?
So I don't, probably the crunchiness, and it's right over there. It's like, I'd come out of work when I work at the Fox Studios, and I could hit that on the way home, getting onto the freeway right off of it's not National, but it's right. I forget the street it's on, but it's right by the 405. Yeah,
right.
I don't know. Like the only reason I don't go there is because it's always so darn crowded.
Are you a corn or flour tortilla man?
So that's interesting. So I will eat both, but I do like flour.
So you're a fan of the oppressor's tortilla, as we like to refer to it here on the show. The oppressor tortilla it's a thing. Look, I get it. There are certain, like for a quesadilla, I think it's acceptable.
There you go. So there you go. That's it right there. Quesadilla, flour, taco, corn. You're right.
There we go. Right answer. And there you have it.
You're right. I was thinking quesadilla,
See, now Eric Karros can run for public office with no scrutiny.
Exactly.
Because we've gotten that sorted. Eric, we really appreciate your time, man, and for the great storytelling and for the soapbox even, because I think again we want to humanize because again it's not just players. Yeah, the name is there, right? Eric Karros, Dale Murphy, all that jazz. But you guys are still people at the end of the day. So I really appreciate you showing the human element of it all.
All good. Hey, thanks for having me on, guys, and. Feel better. Don't get COVID for a fourth time, my man.
If I get COVID for a fourth time, I have to be on some sort of an all-time list.
Seriously. You don't want to be on that list, though, my man.
And speaking of that, if you don't want to bet on me getting COVID, I bet you Bet Online has a line on that where you can't get it. There's a future of some sort, I'm sure.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Nice. Huge segue.
Huge thanks to Bet Online for presenting this week's episode of the podcast. Head on over to their website, betonline.ag. Use our promo code, which is Believe, BLEAV, and you will get a 50% welcome bonus for joining. So go check them out. Huge thanks to them for presenting, but most importantly, huge thanks to Eric Karros for joining us here on the podcast. And we will catch you guys down the road. Go Dodgers.